Good morning. Good morning, morning after Sine Die. I'm Delegate Brooke Learman. It's great to be with you this morning. We had a late night here in Annapolis. Per usual, we adjourned Sine Die at midnight last night. And any bills that didn't pass, didn't pass. We had an incredibly exciting session. We were able to accomplish so much. There were some things that we did not get to, and that was unfortunate and frustrating, but I am very proud of the work that we were able to do. So this morning, I'm going to do a very quick recap. We're still finishing our end of session letter that I will post on my website and that we'll be sending out to people who contacted our office during the session. But I did just want to say hello to everybody. It's been a while, and check in and just go over a few of the things that we did, because I know many people were watching, but many weren't, because there's so much going on and everyone's trying to get their kids back in school, keep up with their work, and try to find a vaccine. So I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy. I did see the latest news about the J&J vaccine, which is really unfortunate, but I hope, I'm glad the FDA and CDC are taking precautions to make sure that everybody can feel confident about the vaccine that they're getting. So I'm going to start briefly with a couple of the bills that I was excited to pass, and then we'll go to some more general legislation. So I was very excited to pass a number of bills this year in a variety of areas. The first bill I want to talk about is HB 97. HB 97 was a really exciting bill. It really confronts the fact that we as a state have not been able to ensure that every Marylander has access to high-speed and affordable internet. And as we've seen during the pandemic, this is really an emergency. Kids, we can't be allowing kids to, have to sit outside a Dunkin' Donuts or a coffee shop to be able to access internet to get online. We now do so much telehealth. That's a safe way. Many people don't have transportation options. And just to stay safe, telehealth is a really important option. You can't do a telehealth visit if you can't get online. And of course, we can't, people can't run a business, especially in our rural areas. It's incredibly difficult to retain talent if you can't have access to affordable, high-speed internet. So I was really excited to work with Senator Sarah Elfreth this year to pass HB 97 and SB 66, the Digital Connectivity Act of 2021. This bill, for the first time, will codify and create an Office of State Broadband. This office will be the focal point for Maryland to receive federal dollars to help us build out our broadband, and for all the local governments to work and have one central point at the state level, coordinating all efforts around increasing access to broadband service. We worked with a huge variety of stakeholders on this bill, and I'm so grateful to all of them for the work that they did, whether it was the teachers unions who understand their kids need to get online, AARP, the Digital Harbor Foundation, great Baltimore City students, SOMOS, and just local governments all over the state, MACO, MML, others who supported this legislation, because we all recognize that we have to act urgently to get people online. One other note is that in the American Rescue Plan, I was very excited because our legislative leaders and governor designated $300 million coming from the federal government that will go through the Office of Statewide Broadband to help our local governments and residents start connecting and really jumpstart the process of getting people connected. So that was an emergency bill, which means it goes into effect as soon as the governor signs it. And I'm hopeful that he will sign it soon so that that office can get started and get going and getting Marylanders all over the state connected. Also worked with Senator Sarah Elfreth from Anne Arundel County on HB 204. This is a bill to make sure that we are actually enforcing our environmental laws. For many years, we have seen a decrease in the number of enforcements of our clean water and clean air laws. We don't pass laws just to have them sit on the books. And so I am excited to pass HB 204 and HB 324, which will create an online portal to allow the public and allow water keepers and others to help make sure that we are enforcing our environmental laws. It's so important now. We even know, of course, for public health, to make sure that our clean air laws, our clean water laws are being enforced. I also want to make sure to chat briefly about an exciting bill. Exciting to be a bill that I worked on with government transparency folks, the Press Association, and our PIA ombudsman, Senator Cheryl Kagan from Montgomery County, and I worked on HB 183, SB 449, to strengthen our state's Public Information Act. Now, I worked on a number of bills this year in the transparency and accountability field. I feel very strongly about the fact that our government should make it easy to understand what we're doing, right? Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and to make sure that all Marylanders understand what their government is doing, how it's doing it, and why it's making the decisions that it's making. It's just really important that public information is truly public. So the Equitable Access to Information Act, HB 183 and SB 449, this is an act that strengthens our Public Information Act. It says for the first time in state law that every agency of the state government and local governments, so all over, because that's all state law governs all of our local governments and agencies as well, is that we must take a posture of proactive disclosure. That means, when a government writes a report, when they're doing work, they shouldn't be hiding that somewhere. Products that the government is making should be publicly available on websites. You shouldn't even have to ask. You shouldn't have to file a PIA for government work that is accessible. So the first thing that this bill does that's so important is, for the very first time in our state's history, we are defaulting to proactive disclosure rather than making people ask for things. The second thing it does is it lowers the bar to enforcing the PIA. So right now, if you make a Public Information Act request, and it's denied, you go to circuit court. And that's a really high bar for a lot of people. Many people don't have the resources to hire a lawyer or don't feel comfortable appealing in the court process. So now, instead of needing to go right to court, you must go to an ombudsman. We already have an ombudsman. She's been doing great work, but she's been underutilized. And through that ombudsman, you'll go through a mediation process working with the agency to try to come to an understanding and access that record. If that doesn't work, then you will next go to an administrative body, the compliance board, the PIA compliance board, and their jurisdiction will now be expanded so that they can review all denials of records. And so that is really a way to lower the bar to ensuring that our PIA can be enforced. And I'm excited about that. Another bill that I've worked on for many years, 3 years, there were a lot of third times the charm this year, was a bill to establish the Maryland Arts Capital Grant Program. Now, so many sectors have been so devastated throughout this past year and throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. The arts sector is one of them. We are not filling theaters today or anytime soon, probably to capacity at least, with theater goers. Our art museums stood empty for quite a while. Art classes suspended except for online. So there are so many ways in which our arts institutions have been uniquely hurt. And yet our arts institutions are so important to us as a state, right? It's so important that our kids have arts education. It makes our communities so much fuller to have arts organizations doing public art, putting on performances, playing live music, and giving us spaces where people can go and understand and appreciate artwork. They're huge culturally important and huge economic drivers in the state of Maryland. So for the first time, I'm very excited, we are creating a program to support their capital needs. So the Maryland Arts Capital Grant Program will create within the Maryland State Arts Council, a program to support our smaller arts and cultural institutions with capital needs. It will be run through the Maryland State Arts Council. They'll create a grant program, and there will be an application so that anybody can apply. And I felt like this was a really important bill to pass because it really lowers the bar for our smaller arts organizations. We will still be here as legislators to help with legislative bond initiatives, and many of our larger arts institutions hire lobbyists and work in Annapolis to make sure that they can get the funding that they need. And that's important and will continue. But for many of our small arts organizations, and especially some of our Black-owned arts organizations that are just breaking onto the scene, this is not, that's not a viable option. And so it's really important that we nurture this work and nurture that art to create more culturally vibrant spaces and continue the economic development work that the arts community does. And so this capital grant program really lowers the barriers and lowers the bar to entry to make sure that you can have these arts organizations can access capital dollars. Also excited about the Jordan McNair Act, the Safe and Fair Play Act, HB 125, which for the first time will ensure that our college students are not being told what to do by the NCAA. So the NCAA right now enforces a rule and requires all colleges and universities within the NCAA to enforce a rule that our student athletes cannot profit off of their name, image, and likeness. We also, a few years ago, saw a very tragic death when we lost Jordan McNair during a college football practice, really unnecessary and tragic death. So the Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act does two things. It really takes a holistic approach to supporting our student athletes in our public universities. First and foremost, it ensures that our public universities and colleges are doing their duty in ensuring safety, the safety and health, the health and safety of our student athletes, and requires them to report back to the General Assembly on the steps that are taking to make sure that our students are safe and well and cared for. It also prioritizes their academic achievements and makes sure that our universities understand that they can't just, that students have to also be held to standards in academia and supported in that way. It also says that colleges and universities can no longer enforce the NCAA rule and prohibition on our student athletes using their name, image, and likeness for profit. This is a really, I was proud to work on this bill with Senator Justin Reedy from Carroll County, bipartisan measure, passed unanimously out of the Senate, overwhelmingly through the House. Just to make sure that we are supporting our student athletes. Many of them come from disadvantaged neighborhoods and families, and this may be the only time in their athletic career that they can earn income, right? They might be at the peak of their athletic career because many of our student athletes, most of our student athletes don't go on to fame and fortune in professional sports, especially our female athletes. This might be the only time that they can take advantage of this incredible skill and the incredible work that they're putting in to earn income off of their name, image, and likeness. So really excited that we were able to pass that. The final two bills I'll mention before moving on are HB 1239 and SB 859. This is a bill I worked on with Senator Antonio Hayes. Really excited to see it get over the finish line. It establishes a program that will do work to close the appraisal gap, especially in our historically redlined communities, in neighborhoods that were purposely kept behind and have never recovered. And because they haven't seen the investments, the public investment, the private investment that's needed. And it also, it's a double whammy because it both will help rebuild our neighborhoods, but also will increase home ownership. DHCD runs a number of programs that help with rental housing, but very few programs, or at least not enough programs, that are focused on home ownership. So this program looks at the fact that there is an appraisal gap right now that exists. And what that means is that if you want to rehab a home in a low-income census tract, a historically redlined neighborhood, whether that's in East Baltimore or Salisbury or Cumberland, or, there are neighborhoods all over the state where this program can work and will apply. If you want to rehab that home, there's a cost difference there's a gap between how much it costs to rehab the home and how much you can sell it for, right? You can sell it for less than what it costs to rehab. And so this program is designed to help fill that gap. It's the last dollar in to try to make it actually work so that developers, especially our nonprofit developers, can work in those communities to do this really important investment and work and keep prices low enough so that people can buy these homes. That is so important. It's an important program. I was really excited to work with Parity Homes and Sean McCloskey and HIP in Prince George's County and Senator Hayes and so many others on this legislation, and excited to see it implemented by DHCD as well. And we'll be following that. Finally, I'll just mention HB 829. This is a bill that passed at 11:30 p.m. last night, my final bill to pass. It creates the Maryland Capital Access Program. This program, I worked on it with Senator Katie Fry Hester. I was thrilled to work with folks from around the state, small business owners and lenders, our banks, our credit unions, CDFIs. The Latino Caucus supported this because it's really all about ensuring more access to capital, right? And one of the problems that we've seen since the Great Recession is a huge decrease in access to capital in Maryland, especially for our Black-owned businesses, which are turned down at twice the rate as white-owned business owners for loans. So this program, when it is funded by the Department of Commerce, this authorizes the Department of Commerce to create this program, and it can use federal funding that we expect to get through the SSBCI program through the U.S. Treasury as part of the American Rescue Plan. This program is a guaranteed loan loss reserve program, and it allows banks and credit unions and CDFIs to loan to small businesses that perhaps otherwise they wouldn't loan to, because they know they will get their money back if the loan fails from the state, or at least some portion of their money back from the state. And that allows them to slightly alter some of their underwriting standards to take into account that this money is available. So I'm really excited about this bill and hope that the Department of Commerce will authorize it. Next, I'm going to start talking about our Transit Caucus bills. So I was really excited this year in the Transit Caucus. We had a number of big wins. We were able to pass a number of bills. The first one I'll mention is HB 114, which I worked on with Senator Cory McCray. His cross-file was SB 199. This is a bill that will, it's called the Transit Safety and Investment Act. I'm thrilled that we were able to pass it. It is a bill to make sure that we are not giving up on MTA, that we're investing in MTA, and we're saying that transit matters. You know, our state and our economy cannot function without a strong and reliable transportation system. Several years ago, we passed a Transit Funding Act to support WMATA, the metro and system around the DC suburbs, but we weren't able at that point to fund MTA because we didn't know what the extent of their capital needs were. So we asked MTA to create a capital needs assessment to assess all of them, all of their structural needs, all of their capital programs, and look and see how much they needed to make sure they were staying in a state of good repair. They did that. They came back 2 years ago in 2019, and they said, turns out there's a $2 billion gap between what we need and what we see coming down the pipeline from the state. And so I was really excited to work this year. We weren't able to get it passed last year because it was a shortened session, but this year, a huge coalition of environmental groups, transportation groups, economic development groups, groups that represent people with disabilities who, of course, use transit as well, to really say, no, this is a must do. We have to be supporting our transit system. We saw so many of our essential workers rely on transit through the pandemic. You know, we rely on our essential workers and they rely on transit. And so I'm so pleased that we were able to pass this legislation this year. And it was a big win for the Transit Caucus as well. Another bill that was part of the Transit Caucus that came from Senator Corderman was a bill to study expanding MARC to Hagerstown, to Western Maryland. And we were able to pull that bill into the Transit Safety and Investment Act and pass it in a bipartisan way. Because Hagerstown, it's a great town in Western Maryland. We want to make sure that people can access it and that folks in Hagerstown can access jobs and other opportunities elsewhere as well. We were also so pleased. I was also so pleased to be able to pass the Southern Maryland transit work. So Senator Ellis and Delegate Deborah Davis have been championing for years the Southern Maryland Rail. We know that Charles County is growing so quickly and traffic is horrible. And we can't expand roads to keep up with it. But there is a place that there could be a transit line. And so this year we were able to secure funding to say if the federal government puts in some money, then the state will match that to do the environmental impact study needed to help advance that next program. So very excited about that as well. And finally, really excited that we were able to pass Senator Zucker and Delegate Corman's bill to require the state to move towards electric vehicles for their bus fleet. So MTA, under this legislation, will start moving towards all electric vehicles, which is really exciting to see. It'll be great for air quality in many of our neighborhoods that have buses run through them. And it's just an important initiative. We know that the transportation sector is the #1 emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. And so if we can get people in public transit and out of single occupancy vehicles, that's the first step. And then if we can ensure that those transit modes are electric and do not emit greenhouse gases, that's the next big step. So excited about that legislation as well. I also wanted to make sure to talk about some of the veto overrides, especially on our all-important, incredibly exciting police reform legislation. I don't know if any of you watched The View, but the speaker in Maryland got a shout out yesterday from Whoopi Goldberg, because we are the first state in the country now to repeal our Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, the YOBR. So I was really pleased that we were able to override the vetoes. This is an incredibly important initiative to make sure that we're keeping all Marylanders safe and in reforming our policing practices. So HB 670 is the speaker's bill that repeals LEOBR, and very excited about the fact that we could pass that. The speaker, Delegate Vanessa Atterbury, Delegate Luke Lippinger, showed incredible leadership over the past 9 months in pushing us to go big and to do more. And so I was thrilled that we were able to override the governor's veto of that. Also SB 71, this is the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021. And very excited to see, this was by Senator Charles Sidner for Baltimore County, Baltimore City. And it requires for the first time ever that all local and state law enforcement officers to wear body cameras by 2025. The legislation also significantly limits the use of force by law enforcement and allows it only when it's necessary and proportional, and requires officers to intervene when excessive force is being used. We also passed SB 178. This is Anton's law. Senator Carter and Delegate Acevedo have been championing for years. It provides the public with access to police disciplinary records. And additionally, the bill also puts greater restrictions on how and when no-knock warrants can be used. And, getting back to transparency, this is so important in so many aspects of government. And, this bill will allow that police misconduct and disciplinary records will no longer be held in secret. The records can be publicly accessed under the PIA. And the bill that I talked about earlier, that PIA strengthening bill that I passed, that is part of, that will encompass all of this as well. And you can access these records under the PIA, regardless of the outcome or when the record was made. There can be no destruction of records, so police agencies can no longer destroy or expunge police misconduct and disciplinary records. And a police agency can lose state public safety grants if it fails to provide the data on police misconduct. Also really grateful to Senator West and Delegate Jazz Lewis for their leadership on the Juvenile Restoration Act. This is a bill that ends juvenile life sentences without parole. Individuals who are convicted as adults for an offense committed as a minor can be considered for parole now after being in prison for at least 20 years for the offense. And I think this like the Dignity Not Detention Act, the immigration bill that we passed last night, this makes Maryland a more moral state, and I think a more humane state. And these are the types of laws that make me proud to be a Marylander. These are the types of laws that make me proud to be a state delegate when I can vote to make sure that we're upholding human rights here in Maryland. And especially, for the Juvenile Restoration Act, it's these are tragedies, horrible things are done and have happened. But this bill says that, after 20 years, if you're able to retain hope that you can get out, it's a belief in, it shows that the state believes in redemption and doesn't govern based on revenge. I think that's so important for our justice system to have credibility and for us as a state. So there's we passed hundreds of more bills. Last night at a late hour, we also passed HB 81, which I'm excited about, to provides for access to counsel for people in eviction proceedings. And a huge thank you to all of the advocates who worked on that, as well as Senator Shelley Heddleman and Delegate Wanika Fisher for their leadership. Delegate Janelle Wilkins championed so many voting rights bills this year. I was really excited about that. Really disappointed that we did not pass her eviction bill at the last minute, but we did pass so many. We also did not pass the Climate Solutions Now Act, unfortunately, but we did take some of the pieces of it and pass them through other bills, like the zero emission vehicle bill that I mentioned. And we also passed a bill, HB 991, that has the provision for planting 5 million trees over the next 10 or so years as well, from the Climate Solutions Now Act. So I'm really excited about all of these bills. I realized I didn't even talk about education, but we passed a number, we passed a number of education bills. Of course, first and foremost was funding for our HBCUs, that we passed that early in session. Very excited and grateful for Senator Sidner and Speaker Jones' leadership on those bills to make sure that we are finally fairly funding our HBCUs to ensure that they can provide and continue providing the world-class education that they do provide to so many students in Maryland, and that they can expand those programs. We also passed the blueprint too. Well, we overrode the blueprint, the veto of the governor's blueprint early in session, seems like a lifetime ago. But we also passed Blueprint 2.0, which amends the gaps in the education funding that were exposed by COVID-19 and provides more support to address learning loss, expands behavioral and mental health resources, will help us close the digital divide with more access to broadband devices. And it just requires better reporting and data tracking for additional accountability. So very excited that we were able to pass that as well. And last night at a late hour, my roommate and my delegation chair, Delegate Stephanie Smith, passed a great bill that she's been working on for several years to make sure that students don't have to pay, that many students don't have to pay fees to attend summer school. So especially this year when many students are going to need that extra help. It was a really important bill to pass, and I was really thrilled when she came through and said, "Oh, it passed the Senate." It was exciting to see. So there were so many more bills that we passed that I could go on and on about, but I want to end here. It's been 30 minutes, and I got to get to finish writing my end of session report so I can send that out to everybody, and I will link it here on Facebook tomorrow when it is ready as well. But before I end, I just want to say this was my 7th session. It was certainly a session unlike any others. And I am really proud to be a delegate from District 46 and really proud to be a representative, a delegate in the Maryland General Assembly. It's incredibly humbling. It really is the honor of my lifetime to do this work. I love it. I'm so grateful to my legislative director, Danny DePietro, who keeps everything moving and the wheels turning and keeps me on time. And this year helps make sure I knew which Zoom to log into to vote or to participate in hearings. So grateful to her, grateful to our amazing interns. I had phenomenal interns this year from the University of Maryland College Park, University of Baltimore Law School, and Johns Hopkins Fellow, and just really grateful to all of them for the amazing work that they did. It takes a village. Grateful to my husband for watching my kids, our kids, a little bit more than usual, and really grateful to serve under the leadership of Speaker Jones. She's been a phenomenal leader. She, came in very difficult circumstances and has had 2 incredibly difficult and challenging sessions, and has just shown grace and persistence and leadership. And I'm so grateful for her leadership of our House. And finally, a shout out to my team. I love serving with our Senate President, who's my senator and friend, Bill Ferguson, our amazing Judiciary Chairman, Luke Klippinger, who I just love serving with and seeing him on the floor, and my wonderful teammate, Delegate Robin Lewis, who I love texting back and forth with to keep up with all the bills that we're working on during session. I'm so grateful for their friendship and for being wonderful teammates to work on behalf of District 46. Thank you all so much. I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and I look forward to doing more briefings throughout session. Take care, be safe, wear a mask, and have a wonderful week. Thank you.